My name is Louis Genoffi. I'm a switchman in the Los Angeles yards. This is our new television set. Looks pretty nice, doesn't it, Lily? But do you remember the one they delivered all smashed up?
Do I remember? I'll never forget it. We'd invited a whole group of friends over to help us celebrate. I baked a cake and made sandwiches, and no television set.
And I was going to be allowed to stay up late, but when it came all broken up, I had to go to bed.
Let me tell you the whole story. It started on payday, a couple of months ago. Now, paydays are always special, but this one was extra special. Lily and I had been setting aside money for a television set. The dealer had ordered it 2 weeks before, and a big bite of this check would finish the deal. I told the boys, this is the check that buys that 21-inch console. And off I went to meet Lily and cash the check. Leaving Lily and our girl Betty stocking up at the supermarket for the big night, I went to pay for the set. The man said that the set was down at the freight house, and he'd send his delivery truck to pick it up and bring it direct to my house. I suppose after you have a set a while, you get used to television. But for us, this was still a big day. I went to pick up Lily and Betty, and we went home to wait for the set to come. Betty was all excited. Every kid on the block knew we were getting a set. Lily and I were almost as bad. We had invited half the neighborhood to help us celebrate. We sat around waiting anxiously. I kept one eye on my watch and one on the door as I tried to read my paper. Later that afternoon, it finally came. I heard a truck and looked out the front door. Sure enough, it was our set. "It's here," I yelled. I helped a fella get his hand truck up the front steps and steered him carefully through the door and into the living room. The big moment had arrived. We were all gathered around to look at our new prized possession. "Set it down here," I told the man, and he did. "Hey, what are all these holes in the carton? What'd you do to my set?" "Search me," said the fella. "That's the way they gave it to me at the freight house. If there's anything wrong, the people at the Santa Fe did it." We opened the carton, and you can imagine how we felt when this is what we saw. What a mess. It looked like somebody shoved it off the rim of Grand Canyon. There'll be no celebration tonight. The big day turned out to be a big bust. The next day, I put them all away like they had eggs in them. I couldn't get the picture of that television set out of my mind. But to tell you the truth, what was really eating on me was a crack one of the neighbors made. He said, "How do you guys keep your customers if you deliver stuff like that?" Well, how do you answer a question like that? What about the folks in Chicago who made the set? Why should they keep shipping Santa Fe? There sure must be a lot of delicate work in making a television set. All the wires and tubes and connections. The manufacturers must get mad at us if we rough up that big picture tube and those expensive cabinets. And if his dealers complain that we smash some of their sets, wouldn't he start thinking about shipping them some other way? And as long as I'm asking questions, let me ask another. How did a set that left the factory in perfect shape like this get all banged up when it was turned over to us? I don't know the answer to that question exactly, but I could guess at a lot of things that could have happened. You don't work for Santa Fe for 17 years without hearing about loss and damage and seeing some of the things that cause it. The damage could start right here at the freight house. It's checked in and headed for the toveyor. Maybe the stoneman is a fellow who usually does a good job, but when he takes this load for his block, he may not be keeping his mind on his work. Maybe he was still thinking of something else when he stowed it in the rough freight end of the car. Don't ask me what he was thinking about when he did this. Maybe that's how it started. I don't know. Maybe he stowed it right. Anyway, the car with my set in it is in a cut headed for the train yard. Well, a lot of things can happen in a yard. For example, the foreman says, "I got 2 for 4. Without checking the room, the field man says, "Let him come." "Kick," says the foreman. There they go, and the fieldman looks. Too late, it won't hold him. Maybe that smashed it. Could be. Or maybe a foreman says, "Cut 1, the one with my set in it." "Kick," he says, and then he starts to wonder what his next cut is. He studies his list too long, and the cars go faster and faster. "Hey," says the pin puller. "Hey!" "Oh," says the foreman, waking up. "Stop! Stop!" But he kicked him too hard. They're going down a well, and there's nothing he can do about it. Hold your ears. There goes my picture tube. Maybe it didn't happen in the yard. Maybe it happened on the road. Maybe some engineman grabbed her by the neck and took off in too big a hurry. He gathers up the slack in a rush, and my set takes another wallop. Maybe that didn't get the whole job done, but every little bit helps. If it didn't happen starting, it could have happened stopping. A fella can get in as big a hurry coming into town as getting out. And when he sets the nose of the diesel down like this, he can really break up the china. When they were making up the train again, maybe the fieldman was standing out where he could relay the foreman's signals around a curve. The reason I think of this is I did it once myself. Up comes Joe and yells, "Hey, Ernie, you going to the ball game tonight?" So they start gabbing, like I did. Meanwhile, the foreman thinks they're getting his sign until he sees nothing's happening. Joe and Ernie had the ball game all figured out, but they sure missed the sign on this pitch. With nobody relaying his signal, the foreman goes down swinging. You sure feel silly, don't you? Like I say, lots of things can happen in a yard. The crew rides the engine right by the joint they're going to make without dropping a man off to make the coupling. They tie on to the first cut in the track. They'll make this one all right. But what about the other? You must be going to shove blind. Yep. Go back and get him, the pin puller says. But look at this. Here's an engine working on the lead at the other end of the yard. Well, they're trusting to luck that the pin dropped. It didn't make, and they're off to the other end. Their luck ran out. It always does sooner or later. Or suppose some other fella goes after a switch with the wheels close to the points. We could have told him he didn't have time to make that one. Well, those are some of the things that could have happened. What actually did happen, we'll never know. But somehow, somebody really smashed up that television set. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was me. We've all pulled boners. A fella's wife might say it must have been somebody else. But we know better.
You know, Louis, I've just been thinking. If all the Santa Fe employees worked as carefully as you, we wouldn't have had as much trouble getting that first set.
Honey, I hate to say this, but it could have been me that wrecked it. Remember when I met you and Betty at the supermarket? and the day I paid for the set. Now, I know a fella's wife thinks he does his work just right. And most of the time we do. But remember when we were shopping for the big party that didn't happen? And I decided I wanted some applesauce? Remember when you said, "Oh, I don't want an old dented up can"? It struck me funny that, of all people, a switchman's wife would turn down a dented can. But now, after the broken set and that question, how do you keep your customers when you deliver that kind of stuff? Maybe it isn't so funny. Maybe if we could look inside that car when we switch it, we'd always handle it the way it should be. And never let it hit like this. One smack like that, and you end up with a couple of tons of canned goods that nobody wants. When it gets to the man who ordered it, he blows his top, and he says to the Santa Fe man, "What do you fellas do with this stuff? Play baseball with it?" It looks as though that's what you do, he says. I don't know what the Santa Fe man says when he looks at that pile of junk, but I'd hate to be in his shoes. And I guess it's the same way with delay as it is with damage. Somebody ordered this lumber, and I guess they're waiting for it. But that wallop it got is sure gonna hold it up. Come to think of it, I suppose somebody's waiting for all those shifted C's sitting around on the rip track. No question that most of us do a pretty fair job most of the time. We have our mind on the job, and we're doing the job right. Oh, there may be a few who aren't, but most of the things that go wrong come from unintentional mistakes. Now, this won't do the Journal any good, but it sure took the squeak out of Sam's shoe. Of course, Sam's partner discovered his mistake and oiled the box. But suppose he hadn't. Maybe this could have happened. "There's one smoking," the brakeman says. "Hot box! Hot box!" "Stop her," says the conductor. "We've got a hot one." At best, a trainload of perishables is going to be standing still while they fix the box. And if the brakeman hadn't spotted it when he did, we might even have a train in the ditch. Even I can figure out that fellas who ship perishables don't like any kind of delay. It's that question again of how do we keep our customers if we don't do our job right? It's the same deal with livestock. They're perishable, too. Delay can shrink them. And if we don't feed them and water and rest them when we should, it's a cinch they don't get to market in good condition. And, of course, nobody wants to rough-handle livestock. We handle a lot of cattle in California, but we don't see too many grain cars. It's the boys in the Middle West who really move grain during the harvest. They tell me that you can inspect a car from top to bottom before you cart it for grain, and you can put up a grain door that's really grain tight. But it don't mean a thing if you let it hit at 7 or 8 miles an hour. That's still gonna put the grain on the ground. I pull a boner today, you pull one tomorrow, and when you add up all the damage, it fills a couple of 3 warehouses. They've got everything you can think of in there. Stoves, water heaters, refrigerators, all of it damaged in one way or another. This is all merchandise refused by our customers. You look at it, and the question the fellow asked really sinks in. How do you keep your customers when you deliver stuff like this? You know, Santa Fe isn't the only way to ship. A shipper has his choice of railroads. He picks the one that does the best job. Truck lines are after our business every day of the week, and they don't need men to switch cars. Airlines, with their air freight, are moving heavier and heavier items all the time. The day when railroads had a monopoly on the freight business is long since past. We get new customers and keep old ones by meeting and beating competition. We must be meeting competition. I see an awful lot of freight moving on our line. Like I said, most of us must be doing right most of the time. We must be checking the freight in carefully, making sure the count is right, making sure the merchandise is in good order. 95% of the time, we must be stowing it right, putting it in the right end of the car. We must be bulkheading it tight so the load won't shift and damage the merchandise that we carry. When the foreman says he's got 2 for 5, most fieldmen are on their toes like this one. If there isn't room, we shove. And most of us give good, clear signals like this. Or like the easy sign this man has given, not weak little motions that an engineman 20 car lengths away has to strain his eyes to see. From what I know, 95% of us, and maybe more, take pride in being good at our job. It takes know-how to gather up the slack slow and easy and get off to a good start. In fact, it takes a lot of know-how to be a first-class railroad man, no matter what your job is. And we all take pride in doing a job the way it should be done. You know, when you think about it long enough, maybe it's not so hard to answer that question about preventing loss and damage and keeping our customers. When we work together, we're a team that's hard for any competition to beat. Preventing loss and damage boils down to a pretty simple thing. If I did a little better, and you did a little better, I bet we'd get the job done.
Louis Janoffy is right. The men on the Santa Fe are doing a good job. It's a question, as Louis says, of doing just a little better in preventing loss and damage. We can all take pride in the overall performance of Santa Fe. For example, some shipments come to us like this, obviously improperly loaded or perhaps rough-handled en route. In the course of a year, 150,000 tons are reloaded here. The merchandise is properly stowed and bulkheaded so that the load will ride safely to its destination and reach the customer on schedule and in good order. Preventing loss and damage is not only a matter of every man doing a little better, but of providing proper facilities. With a modern hump yard like this, Santa Fe provides the shipper with fast, careful handling of his freight. The hump yardmaster receives teletype consists of trains and directs overall operation from his tower on the crest of the hump. Thousands of cars go over the hump daily and on into the classification tracks. Cuts of 100 cars or more may be shoved to the hump in one continuous movement to be switched into numerous different tracks. From his tower, the retarder operator lines the switches and controls the speed of the cars through a series of electronically controlled car retarders. Cars for all points reached by Santa Fe and for connecting lines move over the hump in a steady stream. The Argentine hump, like the enlarged and improved Belen yard, is part of the great building program, which is making Santa Fe America's new railroad. Construction is going apace as new tower yard offices are completed, providing an overall view of the yard. Communication is constantly being improved with the latest electronic equipment. New yard leads, new tracks, new rails are being laid. Curves are being clipped, grades reduced. Giant icing machines fill reefer bunkers with 5 tons of ice in 60 seconds. Another reason why we call Santa Fe America's new railroad. Progress that pays its own way. Route of the Chief, the Super Chief, El Capitan, moving millions of tons of freight across mountain and prairie, Santa Fe is one of the great traffic arteries of the nation. Yet its richest resource is the loyalty and skill of its 65,000 employees who are building with Santa Fe a secure future for themselves and their families. In the conscientious efforts of Santa Fe people to improve freight service, to reduce loss and damage, is found the key to their own future through the ever-increasing ability of Santa Fe to serve the nation. Down the tracks of progress come the paydays of tomorrow.